feel your max with Brooks Running and the all-new Ghost Max 2. They're the shoes you deserve, designed to streamline your stride and help protect your body. Treat yourself to feel-good landings on an ultra-high stack of super comfy nitrogen-infused cushion that takes the edge off every step, every day. The Brooks Ghost Max 2. You know, technically, they're a form of self-care. Brooks, let's run there. Head to brooksrunning.com to learn more.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu, and as I talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always interviewing entrepreneurs, people on the cutting edge, developers, software entrepreneurs, so that I can get these conversation messages recorded and shared with the world. So in that light, I have Jonathan Zacks, and he's the founder of GoReminders. And his platform is a software as a service platform that helps people get rid of no-shows, helps business owners increase their revenue and cut off wasted staff time. So I'm going to let him talk all about this interesting concept and tell us about the story. So Jonathan, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Christopher.
Yeah, I find developers and entrepreneurs that do platforms and software as a service, AI as a service, very interesting. So tell us more about your background story and we'll get to it.
Sure. Yeah, so I have been an entrepreneur my whole career in a couple different types of businesses. And I graduated from college with a computer science degree about 20 years ago and had very not shiny job prospects because it was right after the dot-com bubble had burst. And so some similarities to now with tech companies going way down, except just enormously bigger and worse for so many, like companies just were humongous and just vanished within the span of a year. And so when I entered college, it was just the height of the excitement and just like the building of that bubble. And midway through, it just totally crashed. I thought I would be at a fancy job at a big company or a well-funded startup. And just none of those opportunities were there for me because I really wasn't a hardcore engineer. And I was just looking for an entry-level engineer job. And there were so many layoffs and everything that it was hard to get. So I started helping people with computers in their homes, building up an IT consulting business and web development, SEO for businesses. And somewhere along the way, really wanted to create some software platforms. So tried a few of them. And my friend and I had an idea for GoReminders. And this is the business that has taken off in terms of the software platform.
Sounds like this is what's happening to a lot of my colleagues and associates that they work for these crypto startups and now they let go because of all this turmoil.
Yeah, definitely lots of layoffs now as well, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. And then sounds like MailChimp, software as a service, all these really cool ideas. Tell us more about GoReminders. What is the USP and how it serves the clients and the customers?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, it's really meant for businesses that are trying to cut out no-show appointments. If people have some businesses have that problem and they're not really aware of how much of an impact it has. So some of it is just calculating how much an impact no-shows can have on how much wasted time, lost revenue, and all that. And others really know, and they're just looking for solutions. Our platform sends out automated text message and email appointment reminders ahead of appointments. We have online booking. We have messages that can go out after an appointment asking for a review or reminding people to make a follow-up appointment. We have a bunch of other features that are all really useful for the types of people who need appointment reminder software. And so we also have text blasts and email blasts and a bunch of other things that are not necessarily for dealing with no-shows, but really catered to people who have issues with no-shows. And we came to this idea by basically the origin story is my co-founder, my friend Justin, who's now my co-founder, pardon me, had an appointment and hospital checkup appointment for a procedure he had a year earlier. And he got a call one day saying, hey, you missed your 1-year checkup a week ago. Do you want to reschedule? And it was just mind-boggling to us how technology could solve this problem and how much wasted time there was of the doctor, nursing staff, a receptionist, infrastructure of the hospital, just like that gap that not only did he not show up, but they're now having to spend extra time calling to say, do you want to reschedule, potentially losing him as a patient forever if he doesn't get that message or didn't reschedule. And it would just be so much more efficient to remind people ahead of time. So that was the genesis of GoReminders. We were like, we can solve this. We can build software to automate this and save people a ton of time and energy and lost revenue. And we started doing some calculations, and my other business is appointment-based, a lot of it. And so I personally firsthand knew the pain of no-shows and also knew how it can be like, oh, it's a relief. I have an extra hour here. And when you add it up, it's, oh my God, it could be like 10 or 20% of my business. My business could be a lot bigger if I just didn't have these, and I could fill these slots by knowing ahead of time or plan my lunch or plan to leave early, things like that. And yeah. And so basically we started building the software. And one of the themes with my business life has always been focused on bridging the gap between technology and engineers and non-tech savvy people. And so that is something that we really focus on at GoReminders, making really powerful software that can help businesses a ton, but is really easy to use and especially easy to get started. And so that's a unique aspect of GoReminders, is that a lot of some platforms have this functionality. It's either not as developed and not as good as what we do. And often it's much more complicated. You have to take more clicks, more steps, more learning, more setup before you can even start sending reminders, things like that. So we built GoReminders to just be super easy to set up. There's essentially no setup from when you start using it. You can just start entering appointments. If you want to customize what the reminder says, no problem. You go in, you customize, say whatever you want. If you want to set up a sequence for one message to go out here, another message 3 days later, and you can do all of that in GoReminders, but you don't have to. If you're only one location, you don't have to choose a location every time you create an appointment. It's just like you just have your template and that's it. If you have multiple locations, you add your locations, suddenly a locations drop down appears. So we're really focused on just making like very simple, straightforward, easy to use software that's super powerful under the hood.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've been reading this book called The Cold Start Problem, where you create a platform and you're trying to get basically buyers and sellers or whatever you call it, or it's the drivers and the rider. Airbnb is the host and the guest. So what is your USP for people to onboard, to actually use it and the people actually buy the service? How do you do that?
Sure. So essentially that is a problem when you have to get 2 batches of people on board. So the way we solve that is essentially the patients of, let's say it's a patients of a doctor's practice, like they don't need to sign up for anything. They don't need to download our app. They don't need to do anything. All they need to do is have a phone that can receive text messages. And so the medical practice would sign up and they start entering their appointments, or they import their appointments. And our system takes it from there, automatically reminds their patients to show up for their appointments. Whatever you program in the template will automatically pull in the person's first name. If there's a service or if there's a location, it pulls in all those details into the reminder messages and kicks those out to the patients. And there are certain settings you can customize, which we recommend based on your practice. Like if you need to know 3 days ahead of time that someone is going to cancel because you need 3 days to be able to fill that slot in a calendar, then we recommend asking for confirmation at that 3-day reminder. If you ask for confirmation an hour before, that gives people an out way too late. You won't have a chance to fill that. But when you ask for confirmation, you're basically giving people an opportunity to engage, make sure they check their calendar. And sometimes people check it and go, oh man, like I can't go that day. So it's really great to be able to know that ahead of time enough that you can fill that hole. And yeah, so medical, either sole practitioner or group practice would sign up for our platform. And it's really easy. Like we don't have a super complicated sales process. Everything is self-serve. We are available. If someone wants a demo, if someone has questions, we have stellar customer support that we've invested a lot in over the years. Again, try to make it just easy to use. And that's it. The doctor's office uses our platform to keep its schedule, and our system automatically keeps track of confirmations. People can reply C to confirm or click a button in an email to confirm, and all that gets automatically updated. So, for example, if you want to call people who haven't confirmed, you just look through the list to see, okay, there's 2 out of these 10 people haven't confirmed yet. Great. I'm going to call them to make sure they're showing up. But it just reduces the workload by a ton to use a platform like this.
Yeah. Interesting. Tell us about, let's see here, basically increasing pricing for clients as a service business. What do you mean by that?
So when I find that it's interesting it really depends on the industry, but a lot of our industry is just really undercharged for things that they could be charging more for. And a lot of people are just scared of when you're running a service business, just will this scare away clients if I charge more for this for XYZ service or procedure? So it really keeps people back from charging what they should and what they could get. And if you undercharge long enough, you'll go out of business. And so that's something I talk about with a lot of our users is just don't be afraid of increasing your pricing for your patients, for your clients, like whatever you need to be able to stay in business. That is the way you're going to serve your clients, your patients. If you are not charging enough for your services, like you're not going to be there in a year. I heard this great story of, this is in another industry, but a hairstylist who it was like on some hairstylist podcast, and it was about how someone was going to their hairstylist forever. They switched to another one, and they switched to the guy who was on the podcast. And he said, they were like, oh man, your prices are so high compared to my old hairstylist. And he was like, your old hairstylist went out of business and they were charging so low. And I was like, would you have paid more for your old hairstylist? And they were like, yes, of course. And it's, there you go. Like people will pay for it. They'll complain about it maybe when prices go up. But when a situation like that happens, they'll be like, oh man, I wish I could go to my old hairstylist. But yeah, so I think that's just like for so many industries, people are creatures of habit, and people like the services and value the services they're getting. And often with increasing prices, a lot of people will just say, okay, great, no problem. And way more than you would think about. It's just like really scary to raise prices, but I recommend it.
Yeah. It's almost like the cost of switching is so much greater than
Definitely
just the pay.
Yeah. It's funny, not about in terms of switching costs. My father is a retired physician, and he has he's like super old school and would spend hours with patients, and in a way that, yeah, I could talk about a variety of stories in that sense, but his patients would inevitably, he'd get behind schedule and they would end up waiting for him. And he had patients who would complain about it. And he would say, listen, that's not my specialty. My specialty is I'm not good at keeping on a schedule. I will make sure that when I'm with you, I give you the time that you need. And he had patients who he would say, listen, if this doesn't work for you and your schedule, here is an alternate list of physicians who I respect, who you can absolutely go to, and they'll be great. And they run their practice. They're always on time and they're always on schedule. And he had patients that would sometimes take him up on that and they'd switch. And then a month or two later, they'd be back because they appreciated that service and they were willing to put up with those scheduling problems. And so I think that's the same concept with raising prices. Like people might complain, but it's unlikely that they will switch practices of any industry that they're used to, especially related to their health, when prices go up. Like you don't want to raise it astronomically, but people wait way too long to raise it, and then they try to raise it too much. But you gotta gradually raise it and just keep up with the expenses. Yeah.
The other thing they talk about is this idea of avoiding self-sabotaging your business. Tell us how you do that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff related to self-sabotage with no-shows, because something that I used to fall into was, I wouldn't plan enough time for my lunch. I wouldn't plan enough time for breaks. I wouldn't plan enough time. I would plan too many appointments in the day when I was going to clients' offices and things, because I always knew like something would happen. Like One client would take a little less time than needed, but like some days it didn't. And I would eat my lunch 3 hours late. And it's in that sense, you're sabotaging yourself. You're letting your clients decide when you're going to eat lunch, when you're going to take vacation, when you're going to go home for the day, rather than really taking control and saying, listen, let me plan in this time. And I will make sure that I remind my clients ahead of time to make sure if they have a cancellation, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You'll be able to fill that. Or at least you'll know ahead of time, you know what? That day I can go home earlier because I can move my last appointment into that other slot, or different things like that. Or we'll at least know ahead of time. There's nothing worse than sitting there at the time of an appointment and thinking, are they going to show up? And then a few minutes go by and am I going to text them? Am I going to call them? And this. And like when that happens repeatedly, you go through, let's say you have a free half an hour, 15 minutes of that was worrying that the person could show up. So you didn't get started on a task. You didn't take a real break. You could have gotten out for a walk. You could have done a lot of things if you had known. And so this, like when you just let no-shows control your schedule, it's like really sabotaging your business. In addition to, if you had known ahead of time, you could fill that and grow your business by getting that revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating discussion. No-shows, just that it's hard to play around, but I've had strategies where it's like you put other things. How can people follow you, contact you, visit your website, work with you, get your products and your services?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely just go to GoReminders.com. If you Google me, you'll find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions, or chat us on the website. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to help in any way that I can to help small businesses out there. We also have some of the things that I touched on earlier related to like when to send reminders, when to ask for confirmation. I have a whole guide on that, like what to maximize your show up rate. And so I will, if I didn't already, I'll send you that link. And if you can put that in the show notes, that will be great. It's a free guide. And so you can link to that. And so that has like useful information, regardless of whether you use our platform, that can really help people streamline their reminder process to cut out no-shows.
Yeah. For all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Jonathan's resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to check out and follow him. I'll be doing the same. And thanks so much. We look forward to hearing more about your future success and what you're doing with your startup.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, Christopher.